believe, yes, I believe you died for me on Calvary. So here I am on bended knees.
We are now in the third chapter of my book and in the fifth session on the Christian in anger. In this one, we're going to talk about Jesus and anger. I always like to go to Jesus whenever I start teaching because he is the truth, and whatever he said is absolutely true. And what he said about anger is very, very profound. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount that if you lust after a woman in your heart, you've already committed adultery. You don't have to go physically commit the act. It can all be done in the confines of your heart and mind. And I want to tell you the same is true with murder. You can do murder all right here in your heart. And Jesus said that when he says, you've heard it said, thou shalt not murder. He goes, let me talk to you about anger. That's what Jesus said. They were bringing up the commandment. There's one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not murder. Jesus goes, okay, good, let's talk about it. Let's talk about your anger. And that's why we know he makes that connection there. This is a very profound verse. 1 John chapter 3, verse 15. Whoever hates his brother is a murderer. And you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. And I make this comment, and it's in the book. The great apostle of love, he didn't write whoever stabs, whoever shoots, whoever kills, or whoever strangles his brother is a murderer. What did he say? Whoever hates his brother. And we did the class, 1 John class, where we went verse by verse. And if those of you who were in that class remember, hate is just when you don't show love. That's John's definition of hate. You don't show love, you're hating your brother. You need to show love because God is love, and those who love know God, and because God is love. And again, this is a profound thought. This is what I'm building on. This verse in 1 John 3:15 reveals that it is possible to commit murder without committing the physical act. You can murder someone in your heart with anger and hatred. One commentator called it murder without knives. I love that, murder without knives. You don't need a knife to murder somebody. Let's go to the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 26. Perhaps the greatest revelation in the Bible on anger. Whenever I preach on anger somewhere for the first time, I always start with these verses. I want to read them through because they're so profound. And you should really meditate on these verses for a long time. There's a lot of revelation here. Let's read it. Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. It says, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. And whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. Notice that word danger. But I say to you, see, they're talking about murder. That was one of the commandments. He says, but I'm telling you about anger with your brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment too. You see that? If you murder, you're in danger of judgment. Your anger, you're in danger of judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. And whoever says, you fool, moros in the Greek, you moron, shall be in danger of hellfire. You're going to hell when you start talking to people like that. Therefore, because of this, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, it's not you against them. You know your brother has something against you. He says, leave your gift there before the altar and go on your way. First be reconciled, huge word to deal with anger, to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary. See, your brother has become your adversary. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge. The judge will hand you over to the officer, and you will be thrown into prison. Assuredly, I say to you, you will by no means get out of there until you paid the last penny. He's saying that if you get into anger, it's going to cost you everything. So here, some very profound things that Jesus is sharing with us about anger. I want to ask you a question, and I want you to raise your hand here. It should be an easy test here for all of you. Let me ask you this question. How many of you here have been angry with somebody? I see a hand. Raise your hand. You've been angry with somebody. I mean, you let them have it. You told them it's just like it is. All right. How many of you here have physically, you've murdered somebody? Can I see a hand? Raise your hand. You physically murdered. I mean, you killed somebody. You got a knife. You got a gun. You shot them. Blood. We'll turn you in too before the service is over. We're gonna expose you right now. You buried him in the back alley. Nobody knows about it. You're still here. You're smiling. Nobody knows you killed him. How many of you have murdered somebody? That's the typical response, is it not? We're angry, but we've never murdered. And Jesus is showing you that in your heart you can be murdering people with anger. None of us will raise our hands to say we murdered. Probably most of us will not. But all of us have to raise our hands with anger. And some of us, if you can look back at your life, you know we've been very angry before, where our face is red, the Barney Fife veins pop out of our neck, and all of that. Yeah, we know all of that. Isn't it interesting as you compare verse 21, when Jesus brings up the issue of murder, he says, you're in danger of judgment. Obviously, when you murder somebody, you're in danger of going to prison, or you could be executed for having done that. And what does he say in the very next verse? He says, whoever is angry with his brother, you're also in danger of judgment. You're exposing yourself to come under judgment. Wow. I want you to notice something. You can't see it in all the translations. You do see it in the King James and the New King James translation. I want you to see this word here, danger. And there's a catchy little phrase, I know you've heard it before, that anger is one letter short of danger. You're not far from danger when you're operating in anger. You guys already know it. You are going to say stuff wrong. You're going to throw stuff. You're going to react wrong. You're going to regret it. You're going to have to go back and apologize. You guys already know the whole thing. You guys already know when you operate in anger, you already know stuff's going to come out of your mouth that you're going to regret because you're upset. And we see it 4 times in these 2 verses. Danger, 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 danger. You guys remember Lost in Space? Were you guys old enough to remember Lost in Space with Will Robinson and all that? Do you remember that robot? Whenever there was some danger, he would start flinging his arms, danger, danger, and his lights would start flashing. And I think some Christians should have that. Maybe they ought to have a t-shirt, danger, angry Christian is coming into your house. I've got anger. Put a shirt. I'm going to buy a t-shirt, danger, touchy Christian. Don't make me angry. I'll go off on you. Danger, danger, danger. When I was a little boy, one of my favorite games was the Operation game. Do you guys remember that? And that guy's name was Sam, remember? And I just noticed it now. He's nude. He is nude. This is vulgar. This is a vulgar game. How did they give us that? And do you remember you would get those tweezers, and if you touched any of the metal on any part of his body, his nose would light up red, you know? I mean, this was one of my favorite games. I was a little kid. Well, as a little boy, I don't know how old I was. I was probably 4 or 5. I took those tweezers and I saw an outlet. And again, I'm a little boy. I thought if I push this in, it will light Sam's nose or it would just power up this game. Oh, I went over and I plugged the prongs of that tweezers right into an outlet. And Zach, you work with construction, and those of you who do electricity, literally my hand froze on that as a little boy. My hand just froze on it like that. And I just, by the grace of God, I was able to, I know what happened was the whole tweezers just melted back and fell off. And that's how, but my arm was numb for like a month. I won't do that again. You know, anger is dangerous. Anger is dangerous. There's danger in it. There's danger of judgment. There's danger of hellfire. There's danger of stuff escalating, which we're going to talk about here. And with Samson, we're going to see that anger just escalates. You don't get better and better and better as you express more anger. You don't get more skilled at anger. No, it's going to get worse and worse for you. And so we have to tell ourselves anger is a dangerous thing. Did you notice the change in persons? That before, in the first few verses, you're dealing with your brother, his brother. And then all of a sudden, it switches over, and now he's your adversary. The person who was your friend, the person who was your brother, the person who was your homie, the person that was the guy you hung around with, or her. And now they're your adversary. They're your adversary. And we're going to talk about that more and say that this is the root of anger issues is right here. If you have a lot of broken relationships in your past, you have a lot of ex-boyfriends, ex-coach, ex-pastor, ex-church, ex-friend, ex-boyfriend, ex-wife. If you have a lot of broken relationships in your past, you're going to have a lot of anger. You will. It's only when you reconcile with people that you begin to deal with the anger issues in your heart. Reconciliation is so huge in the process. We'll say more about that as we go on. Did you notice anger's escalation? You first start out by just being angry. Before you know it, you're saying raka, which means basically you're worthless, you're empty-headed fool, you're an idiot. And then you get all the way to moros, the moron. You're a moron. You're stupid. You use other words too, but we begin to escalate in how we are talking to people. There's this anger escalation. And what does it tell us here? What does Jesus say when you begin to tell people, you fool? What are you in danger of? Hellfire. And he's going to talk about that in just a few minutes about adultery. You're in danger of hellfire. He says you need both in verses 29 and 30. He's going to talk about being cast into hell. And I love what one commentator says. He says, the man who tells his brother that he is doomed to hell is in danger of hell himself. I remember, I may share it in a later story. There was a man here that was Christian, very evangelistic, but at his family, whenever they had families gatherings, he was always condemning everybody in his family, even his own dad. He condemned his dad. His dad was a Christian, but he smoked. And so he condemned his dad every time they got together that you're going to hell, you're going to hell. And he would tell, like everybody, he was the only one going to heaven. Everybody in his family was going to hell. And it's like, wow, little did he know what he was doing. Jesus is quite clear about this basic fact, William Barclay says, we cannot be right with God until we are right with men. The breach between man and God could not be healed until the breach between man and man was healed. And what does he say? He says, even if you come to worship God, he says, before you even get going on the worship, before you even get going to give the Lord an offering of any kind of gift or expression of worship, he says, go take care of that. Go deal with that. And so I make this comment here about the priority of reconciliation. The startling truth about these verses is that Jesus is saying that being reconciled with your brother has a higher priority than the worship of God. Notice I didn't say it was more important. I said it has a higher priority. Why? Because God will not accept your gift offered on the altar until you make it right with your brother. Notice that it didn't say it was more important. I didn't say that either. I'm just saying that it has to be done first. Reconciliation always has priority over worship, over giving, over anything else, because if you're not right with your fellow brother, you're not going to be right with the Lord. So you got to do this. You got to be reconciled first with your brother. All right. Now we're gonna stay right here, and we're gonna talk here because he's gonna go switch into a courtroom scene here with a judge and being thrown into prison. So we're gonna go to that next and look at part 2 of what Jesus says here about anger.
You give me strength to run the race with my hands in head lifted high.